Good morning, everyone. Glad to see that you're all here. Today, we want to spend a little bit of time talking about the role of boards on talent management. For that, I wanted to maybe spend some time looking at some key points that I think are important to consider when we analyze what the board ought to be doing in proper succession planning. So let's not spend too much time in preambles, and let's get straight into topic. I hope everyone can see my slides. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about what do we mean by talent in nonprofits, and sort of we can consider what are some of the issues that we face, although I am of the belief that some of these issues we can tackle and address. And then really just dive into what are the board's responsibilities and how do they can improve the situation. And I want to end up by letting you all know some of the resources that are available for managing in these circumstances. But first, just a quick preamble. This is a very busy slide, which is why I wanted to highlight the key areas that you need to focus on. What it is the CMPL does the board leadership study every so often, and the latest one is this one. And it came up with 3 areas that are areas that require more focus, which are these areas that are in red and in orange. One is how to improve succession planning. The second one is how to be better at anticipating potential challenges in the future. And the third one is how to be better at communicating a vision. This is interesting for me because when we look at this and we think, well, what are the roles of the board and what the board should be doing? These are 3 areas that are clearly in the purview of the board: strategic thinking and anticipation, succession planning, as well as communicating a vision. And if we are collectively feeling in the CMPL study that we are failing at this, then it's not going to help in terms of how we're going to make our agencies more effective. So just to get the right definitions, what does it mean in terms of the areas that need further study? And at the same time, what talent implications does it have? If we're not good, for instance, at achieving a vision and defining that vision, it's hard to attract talent. Talent is only being attracted for the cases that they would be attending and not really for the vision that the organization has. It also doesn't bode well for creating organizational culture. Retaining talent is also more difficult, and diversity is an area that also may be suffering. Efficiency of operations, if the organization is not good at it, it also creates problems, not just with culture, but with training and development, because it's much harder for people to understand how it is that they need to do things. Job design, diversity, and performance management are also affected if we are not doing social impact creation in the right way. Talent retention is also affected if goodwill, social capital, and trust is not looked after. Compliance absolutely affects attraction and retention, and we've seen cases where that has happened. And the whole issue of stewardship, continuity, and legacy will also have a bearing on how the organization is designed, how work gets done, and in particularly the quality of the senior management. These are all areas that we have seen are impacted from a talent point of view. And the boards may not always understand that because they are doing something or they are not doing something, it has implications down the line. So this is why I think this is a very interesting slide to always keep in mind, because it should help you to see that the things that we do well can help us, but the things that we don't do or that we're not doing well will also hinder us in our efforts to get the best people. So one aspect that is also important is understanding that this whole issue of talent management is not necessarily an operational function. This is not just something that is entrusted to the HR team. It's not just something that we are going to do to just hire and do the paperwork and provide the salary increases and run the payroll. I mean, there is, of course, an aspect of talent management that has to do with that, but that isn't really what we are proposing to. What we are trying to do is how do we create a strategic driver of achievement of these organizational goals such that the quality of the services to the beneficiaries, the efficiency of the use of the funds of the funders, the impact that we're having on the lives of those beneficiaries, the trust that we can generate among the funders and among our partners, and the longevity and sustainability that we can have for our agency hinge on proper talent management. If we were to think in terms of a board, if your strategy is what you are trying to achieve, the way you manage your talent is the way that you will implement that strategy. No strategy will get done without the people behind it. And we should not shortchange that process when we are putting together our efforts. So let me stop sharing here for a second and do a quick Mentimeter, couple of questions to see how we are stacking up. If I could ask the Mentimeters to do the first two questions, please. Okay, so please go to Mentimeter. It's www.menti.com. And use the code 92524434. And the first question is, which of the following describes your organization's current practices for board evaluation? Okay. So we'll give it another few seconds. Okay, I think we can close it now. I think we're getting more or less the sense. This is actually good news. More than half of you have formal procedures in place, and I am very encouraged to see that a small but important number are actually going through with 360s. That's quite encouraging. However, you still see that there's over 100 of you that feel that what you have is not formal enough, or perhaps not even evaluated at all. This is part of the issue. Part of the issue is that we as boards are not taking care of ourselves, that we are not looking into what needs to be done, and that we are among ourselves are not quite ready yet to have better discussions. So these 120 plus agencies are ones that ideally should move forward in this respect. Okay, let's go to the second question. What are the common human resource challenges that you face as a board? However, this is a question that what we're asking is for you to type, what is your challenge? And what you will see here will be a word cloud. Thank you. All right. Let's give it a few more seconds. What seems to be emerging is that talent retention is a bigger problem than talent attraction, although talent attraction still seems to be an issue. Seems to be what's in the center here: staff retention, attracting talents, talent shortage. Although succession planning also gets a fair bit of attention. But the second thing that I'm noticing is how many different things we have as HR challenges. Just look at how many different things we're putting on this slide, and how many different issues we seem to be facing. That's actually, to me, quite fascinating, because it's a challenge that we have, and as boards, we need to worry about what is it that we need to do in terms of talent. Okay, let's stop it there. And let's then move into how do we address some of these things. Okay, so let me go back to my presentation. And start talking then about what is it that the board ought to be doing in terms of managing talents. And there's really two roles that the board plays in the management of talent. One is the board talent, so talent management of the board itself. And the second one is the role that the board needs to play in the talent of the organization. So from the board point of view, it's about defining what are the key profiles that are needed for the board based on the strategy. manage the board composition to enhance the value and the effectiveness of the board, plan for succession, and ensure that we are doing assessments to be absolutely certain that we have a well-functioning board. When it comes to the role that the board needs to play on talent management, we have 5 things that we've listed here. One is, what is it long-term that we need in terms of talent? If we have a long-term strategy, say a 3-year strategy, well, what kind of people will we need? And how many of them? Then clarity around direction for recruiting and training strategic positions, and to ensure the success of these strategic positions. Access to corporate networks for recruiting, training, and other areas that we could help our charities with. Develop the leadership, particularly the C-suite, and inspire the organization culture. So let's dive into some of these with a little bit more detail. One of the issues that we continuously see is confusion over the role of the board in talent management. Not quite clear what is it. I mean, the boards are always clear that they have a role with the board, but not always clear what is the role that they need to do with the management of talent. And it's not also always clear if the role that they need to play is strategic or operational. Are they doing the recruiting? Are they vetting the people? Does the CEO have the authority to hire, or does the board have to endorse? How exactly does it work? What is more often the case is that there's no clarity about it. There's no clear differentiated terms of reference, or that the terms of reference are confusing in how they are written. This is a big, important problem. If, as you saw in the word cloud, you have no HR, then this creates a bigger complication, because then who is doing HR? Is the board doing HR, or is the CEO doing HR? Is the head of administration doing HR? Somebody needs to be doing HR. It doesn't happen by itself. Not just the administrative side of it, but the strategic side of it. So these are the issues that each board needs to clearly come to grips with. And it isn't always the HR committee that needs to decide what needs to happen, because the HR committee needs to address the specific policy. What you need to address is the strategic issue of where does the responsibility reside and how will it be carried out. A second role that the board can consider is how can they help in sourcing talent. This sourcing of talent may be because they have access to the right people, they have access to the right networks, they have access to the right channels, they have access to the right recruiters, the right headhunters, and how can they help? Now, this is an interesting question as well, because then we get into the whole debate as to whether or not we should hire people from private sector or not. For any case that people speak about, oh, when we bring people from the private sector, it doesn't work, there is probably an equal number of cases that when we bring people from the private sector, it has worked really well. So, do we have the data? Do we have a clarity of understanding that when we are trying to bring in people from the private sector, that they have the right values, that they have interest in the cause, that they see this as a way to really further what we're trying to do? Eventually, the topic of money comes up and says, well, we can't afford them. We can address that as well at the right time. The third point that I wanted to make is measuring what matters. As the board, you can create or ask management to create dashboards to make sure that you're looking at talent indicators in the right way, and that you are looking at it in the terms that you need. For instance, do we really have the right performance measures? This is an interesting question in the SSAs. How are we measuring success? How do you know if this year was a better year than last year? How do you know if our agency is improving? What kind of ideal target do we do for next year? When we think about what it is that we're all trying to do collectively, we are here to make sure that we improve the lives of our beneficiaries somehow. How is that measured? How are we measuring the quality of the service? How are we measuring the impact of that service? How do we know if the money from the donors that we are using is truly producing good results this year and may produce better results next year? Or conversely, that we can maintain that standard of service, but do it ever more effectively so that we can have more money for growing our programs, or to create additional programs, or to perhaps better retain staff because you'll have more money to pay. Also, that's the kind of idea that you need as a board to make sure management is clearly focused on what it is that matters. This is an interesting question that I often see is answered in very operational terms, how many people we have served. But that's not enough. That's akin to a company saying how many clients they have. It's a good proxy, but it's not the way to measure. They still measure revenue and profit. We don't measure revenue and profit, but we should be measuring the quality of our service and how that quality impacts the life of our beneficiaries. Sounds hard, but it's not impossible. And some of the agencies are already beginning to do exactly that. Another point that is often seen is any one charity, most of the charities are not big enough to truly have a career path that we can create for people. Now, this is an interesting idea because many of the charities, many of the agencies feel that when they hire somebody, they want to hire that person for life. Difficult to do. Difficult to do in this day and age where millennials rule and where they are interested in having many experiences. Difficult to do even in this day and age because this idea of loyalty to the one organization is not quite how people come into it. They come with the idea perhaps of loyalty to the cause, but not necessarily to the organization. What that has created is the idea that you need to stay with us forever, and we're going to craft a career, but because we're not big enough, we can't really make room for you to move. And then individuals craft their own careers, and they craft their own careers by moving around. And the fear that we have is that in that moving around, they leave the sector and go elsewhere, that they go into private practice because they still feel that they're working with the cases, but they leave the sector altogether. That, to us, means that we need to have more collaboration. How do we work together to create career paths that bring individuals across different agencies with the understanding that, okay, I may lose this one, but I will gain another one. And overall, I still have the people that I will need, even if it's not this ideal situation of everybody's going to stay with me forever and ever. This lack of collaboration is leading us into this spiral of no career opportunities, particularly when you couple it with the sense of we can't really pay. There is the myth that people don't want to come into the sector because no money and no career, why should I do that? We need to collaborate better to create career opportunities for our senior leaders. Then what do we do in terms of the board itself? In terms of the board itself, succession planning is essential. 61% of organizations in the board leadership survey said they have a board succession plan, but not formal. what we are suggesting is quite simple. Try in the future to do a couple of key things. One, bring people onto your board through the committees, not necessarily through the board. Get them used to the charity, the programs, what we're trying to achieve, and then build your board level type of succession by bringing people up from committees or subcoms to the boards. This is one area. The second area then, if we're going to bring people up through subcommittees, it stands to reason that you will have people who are more aligned with finance and audit, more aligned with programs and services, more aligned with human resources, perhaps IT, by bringing in people who have that level of expertise into each of these subcoms. And then when you bring them to the regular board, you should have a balance of people that have the different skill sets that you need. So it's a combination of bringing people up slowly, but at the same time, bringing people up because they have the right skills that will work in the case of succession planning. Which also means that boards need to create key profiles for that the organization needs to follow. During COVID, one of the things we found out really quickly is all of a sudden organizations needed to digitalize, and the boards had no one to help steer that strategy. This happened more often than I care to admit. So that is an important part of your succession plan. It's not just, can we have another person join? It's, can we have the right person join? And the right person may not be necessarily my friend. The right person may be somebody that we are going out to recruit, either through CMPL or NCSS or even a headhunter, because they bring the right skill set to the organization. And this needs to be planned. Most board terms are 2 years. We know 2 years in advance when people will leave, which means we need to start the process of recruiting people onto committees well in advance, so that by the time people leave the board, we will have enough people to replace them. The last thing is, how do you measure board effectiveness? How do you know the board is doing a good job? And the board needs to do that. The board needs to be sure not just to comply with the current regulations, but truly to ensure that you are carrying your own weight and that you are doing the best you can for the organization. How well are you getting it done? Board assessments are a must, if not every year, at least every term, so that you can improve the way things are working. So let me again stop there and do a quick couple of more questions. Can we share the Menti again, please? Okay, note that this is a new code, still in Menti, but enter the code 83607756, or you can use this QR code. Okay, and can we see the questions? Again, this is a word cloud. Let's see what we come up with. What are the issues that boards face when they don't hire the right people? Okay, so we're settling on things like misalignment, inefficiency, conflict, tension, turnover. I would also say, we're not saying this, but maybe in effectiveness and an inefficiency is embedded that in the end, it's the quality of the service to the beneficiaries that suffers. That is the biggest issue I find, that we are no longer able to fulfill our mission because we don't have the right people. Okay, let's stop it there and move to the next question, please. Last question, should board members have a management role? It's interesting that, you know, clearly 80% or more of you are thinking that we should not have a management role. And yet, I wish 80% of boards didn't interfere with management. There's probably lots of reasons, and we can get into that over the Q&A session. Lots of reasons why you feel that you must have a management role. And yet, 221 of you right now are saying, 222 now, are saying that we should not. This is another source of issues that we continuously see, which is the clear distinction between the role of the management and the role of the board. What should the board be doing to manage the talent of the agency? Finding the right people for senior roles. That goes without saying. And there are lots of ways to achieve this. We have the Sunray scheme. Other agencies also fund for the senior roles. It's quite important that you get the right person, onboard them properly, select them properly. But one of the key things is make sure that you do have enough to pay for the right level of talent. I find often that it's often the case that charities feel that we can't afford to have a good one, so we'll just try to find as good as we can with the money we have, and that may not be the right one. Once you bring them in, though, you have to also groom them for success, particularly if you're bringing in somebody from the outside. The onboarding process should be no less than 6 months, and it stands to reason that it has to be slow going in the beginning. Many of the people that come in from the private sector have private sector speed sets, and they want to come and change everything quickly. One of the advice that I give to everyone, and I want to give to all of you on the board, is anyone that you bring in from the outside in particular, slow down, make sure that they understand the lay of the land, that they network with all the proper stakeholders, that they understand exactly how things work, that they understand in particular the talent of the people that are in the rest of the management team, and then plan and act accordingly. My suggestion would be to any board that brings in an outsider to a CEO role, that the strategic plan that CEO is going to put together is not a 100-day plan, as is often the case, but at least a 6 months plan, if not a year-long plan. It may sound like a long time, and it could be in some cases, but at the same time, you want to groom them for success. You want to make sure that they learn everything they need to know before they get there. What else do you need to do from the board? Help craft the vision. The best boards are the ones that are clearly aligned with the vision, and that they help to craft that vision. They help to communicate that vision. They communicate it in public. They communicate it among donors. They do a very good job of making sure everyone that is involved understands what the agency is about and what we are here to do. Then provide advice on strategies to achieve that vision. evaluate the performance of the senior team, which goes back to the point we made earlier. What are we going to measure them on? Not just activity, not just volume, but quality. And in particular, decide on senior executive pay and succession plans for them as well. And I, again, want to warn you that executive pay, when we look at the data of who are the most underpaid people in social services, it's typically the executives, not the low-level people. It's typically the higher-level people. And then we wonder why we often think that we don't have enough talent, or that the talent is not up to the level that we think we need. So we believe, and I'm now going to wrap up, that we need to strengthen the capabilities of the boards in a proactive way to build a better sector, to build more effective and stronger social service agencies. To do that, we believe that there's a variety of areas that boards need to be good at. Not just governance, but how do you deal with things like digitalization, HR management, fundraising, public image, succession planning, strategic planning, future readiness. All of these are areas that your board needs to have a view on, needs to be able to do, needs to have somebody, at least one person on the board that can do this, and collectively as a board, ways to ensure that all of this is happening. Now, that's what you signed up to do. You signed up not just to help raise funds, not just to have a point of view when they present you with plans, but to ensure that this agency that you're working for will continue to thrive and will continue to serve the beneficiaries a long time into the future. Because that seems like a lot, we are also quite clear that there's 3 areas perhaps that we see collectively that need special attention. One, the distinction between what boards do and what management does. 2, the succession planning of boards, including, most importantly, the ability to have people with the right skills in committees and boards. And 3rd, to have better functioning of boards by doing frequent assessments and evaluating performance of the board so that we can keep improving. To that effect, and this is my last slide now, there are lots of things that boards can avail themselves on, both from CMPL, the council itself, and NCSS. There are board diagnostics tools and board assessment tools that you can avail yourselves of. There's board engagement platforms, including the networks from both CMPL and NCSS, as well as Gather Here. Board onboarding and training, including the training that's provided by a variety of players, including the Singapore Institute of Directors. There's a board succession planning tool that is about to be launched. Strategic reviews, we have ways to support boards to do that, even to do facilitated board retreats, post-diagnostic consultancies. We can do value assessments if you want to hire board members and you want to do, or CEOs even, and we can make Hogan tools for assessment available. And we also have board mentors and board coaches to help you bring up new board members or to deal with perhaps difficult board members who may need some support. So I want to stop here. I know I've provided a lot of information, but I'm really looking forward to the Q&A and the panel sessions so that we can dive into the details. Thank you very much.